Erdogan is facing the challenge of his political career this Sunday as Turkey goes to the polls. Edgy Temelkuran in this week's magazine says that it's the final countdown for democracy in the country. She joins me now along with Hannah Lucinda Smith. Actually, in this week's magazine, you write about the upcoming elections in Turkey, and you're explaining to a Western audience how we should understand the political scene. And you use an example involving Brexit and Trump. Can you talk us through this?
Yeah, sure. I mean, like all those people who come from complicated non-Western countries, we have to simplify things for the Western audience to have an access to our madness, so to speak. So yeah, I'm using that. Imagine 20 years of Brexit pending, or imagine a Trump with political genius and Islamic aspirations. Recently, we had to do it for the earthquake as well to explain the scale of the impact. We were saying that it's one Austria or two Swedens and so on. So this is what we do. I mean, like, we're trying to break down our extremely complex insanity for the Western audiences. And this was the only way to explain how Turkish people feel after 20 years of Erdogan, I think.
Hannah, could you give us a summary of the election campaign so far?
Yeah, so, I mean, it got off to quite a slow start. At the beginning, when campaigning started in late March, the government said, out of respect for the earthquake victims, we're going to keep it low key. There's going to be no music. There's not really going to be, what you usually have in a Turkish election campaign, which is, election vans driving around, and every public square you have, the parties setting out their stalls and playing music. They said at the start this time around it's going to be very low key, and it was until the end of Ramadan, the end of April, and then since then it's really got into gear. And I think particularly since Erdogan and his team have realised that they are in danger of losing, that there's a possibility that they could lose this one. Kilicdaroglu has never looked like a particularly hopeful candidate in the past, and I think when he was announced as the presidential candidate back in March, probably the government and Erdogan, kind of thought, oh, brilliant, well, we'll definitely beat him. And against all odds, Kilicdaroglu has actually managed to kind of hold a really diverse and quite fragile coalition together. And I think, particularly in the past week, we've seen not only the campaigning increase, both Kilicdaroglu and Erdogan held massive rallies in Istanbul at the weekend. They've been both touring the country all over the place, but also we've seen a kind of escalation of the rhetoric. We've seen Erdogan, increasing this kind of really divisive, really caustic rhetoric. And, at the same time as promising all kinds of things and talking about all the things that he's done in 20 years in power, we've seen him going for LGBT communities. We've seen him going for Kilicdaroglu over his Alevism, over his faith. We've seen a classic Erdogan tactic, him talking about people who give votes to the opposition as terrorists. So he's really turning to all these kind of fault lines that he's exploited in the past and have worked for him in the past. Now the question is, are they going to work for him this time? That's the key question.
Yeah. That's true. I mean, yeah, we are. Well, I am wishing that it won't, but then I can see that it is working for his fanatics, as we spoke earlier before the program, Hannah. I mean, like, it is incredible, and it is not easy to explain, especially to Western audience, why there are still people who are supporting Erdogan like there is no tomorrow. And we all know that, they cannot be convinced otherwise, even if you come with the most concrete, evidence that proves that he's a fraud.
And actually, on that, I mean, you write in your piece about the final countdown for Turkey. Can you talk us through what is at stake here, really, for the country? I mean, were Erdogan to win again, what does that mean?
Well, to begin with, I mean, like, this is a 2 decades long rule, Erdogan. And the first term was a little bit milder, less eventful, let's say. But then after this, he won the power for the second time. He kind of unleashed his aspiration for power, holding on to power forever. And especially after 2013 Gezi uprising, it became clear that there will be suppression, and those who do not obey Erdogan's regime will be labeled as terrorists, which has been the case since last 10 years now. And then after 2016, the coup attempt, everything got really blurry. The coup attempt has been used as an excuse by Erdogan to suppress the entire country, all his critics. And there are thousands of people in prison. Tens of thousands have left Turkey right after the coup because it became clear that they will not be able to live as first-class citizens. And now there's the economic crisis. So Erdogan is very clear through his propaganda machine, through his own statements, that he's going to be ruling the country as a political asylum, so to speak. Recently, like I think it was yesterday, his interior minister, now MP candidate, Süleyman Soylu, a very important political figure in this, campaign, said that they have been stomping on us, referring to the opposition. And he said, we are going to be stomping all over them after the election, which is an open threat. And if you live in Turkey, you know that this means violence. This means all out, oppression. So, Western audiences do not like me using this word, but it is fascism. And it will be fully formed fascism if Erdogan wins this election.
Hannah, do you think that's fair?
I agree with that. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, clearly Erdogan is, he's an Islamist, of course, but I think that there is far too much focus on that part of what he is. If we really examine what's going on here, it's fascism. I mean, look at the kind of, the definition, everything in service of the state. The leader becomes inseparable from the state and inseparable from the nation. So, and then, that system wants to control everything. It wants to control art. It wants to control music, culture, discussion, media, business, everything. Okay, this is a definition of fascism, and this is what's happened in Turkey. And I think, we really can't overstate, if Erdogan wins again and wins another 5 years, there is going to be nothing left of democracy in this country. If we look at what he's done since 2018, after the last elections. So in 2018, those elections triggered a new constitution in which Erdogan is executive president, in which basically the state is almost kind of arranged around him like the Sun King. Everything comes from him. The ministries no longer really have any autonomy. State institutions don't. The courts are full of his loyalists. The electoral board is full of his loyalists. The security forces have been purged. We don't know really what's going on in the security forces and how loyal they are to him. Give him another 5 years, there is going to be nothing left of the democratic checks and balances in this country. Even now, really the only kind of balance that is left is elections. It's his only Achilles heel, is the fact that he still has to go to the ballot box, because that's the way he came in. And that's the rhetoric he relies on. When you listen to Erdogan talk, it's all about the will of the people, about democratization, etc. So he still relies on the ballot box, but pretty much there's almost nothing else left in terms of democratic checks and balances.
And those elections are frequently overshadowed, shadowed by the election fraud, massive election fraud and vote theft, which has become so natural that the opposition party is giving, seminars and briefings about how they're going to protect the votes from the vote theft of the government. This is like insanity. On one side, there is a man and his propaganda machine going towards a war, as if, and, the opposition is still trying to, use the democratic means. I think this is, the importance of this election goes far beyond Turkey, because, all those countries who have been subjected to rising authoritarianism have to learn, if Kilicdaroglu, if the opposition wins, Turkey will be showing the entire world that, you can get rid of an authoritarian fascist leader through democratic means, despite the fact that he ruined every institution in the country. And not only the institutions, to be honest, it's the moral demise of a country. Hannah would be very familiar with this. There are videos of AKP supporters that are quite popular on social media, and they're showing Erdogan devotees, rather, saying we are going to vote for Erdogan because he gave us the chance to beat up the doctors if we do not like them. And they see this as their I don't know. They see this their rightful response to an oppressive elite, which is now which Western world is not quite familiar with that term. So it's not only going to be fascism, but also it's going to be this. Well, I cannot not use strong words. It's going to be vandalism prevailing over, basic moral values of a country.
And just on the fallout from the result, I wondered, do you think that whatever the result is, it will be accepted?
What do you think, Anna?
Listen, Erdogan has form. I mean, in 2019, in the local elections in Istanbul, the opposition won by a super fine margin. It was the first time in 25 years that Erdogan's party had not won in Istanbul. Istanbul is his home city. It's his power base. It was like and he turned it into a referendum on himself as well. So it was like a personal insult to him. And he leaned on the electoral board to overrule it. Now, in the end, what happened, İmamoğlu, the opposition candidate, he's got a really, really smart team around him. They really went for it in terms of, hitting the streets and doing whatever they could. And he won again. But, I think, whether you see this as like a hopeful sign or, a kind of warning depends on whether you're an optimistic person or not. Some people say, well, look, in the end, democracy won. Personally, for me, I think, this shows that he's totally willing to use the institutions to overrule results he doesn't like. And I think, this is national elections. This isn't just Istanbul. We're 4 years on from that. He's gathered even more powers. Back in 2019, the Constitutional Court was still somewhat independent. Like now, not at all. And I think, it comes down to a numbers game. I think if the opposition can win it by a really clear margin, and I'm talking sort of 10%, then it would be very, very difficult, I think, for Erdogan to lean on the bureaucracy and on the state apparatus as he did in 2019. On the other hand, if it's 2%, 3%, which is what it's looking like at the moment, I'm sure he's going to do that. I have no doubt. And
just finally, Ektim, perhaps you could explain to viewers on this, if Erdogan loses, what can the country and those looking on expect from the opposition? It's a coalition of different parties, is that right?
Okay, I cannot be cool-headed about this. I have many friends who are going to wear belly dancer costumes and dance in central Istanbul, men and women. So it will be a big holiday, a national holiday for sure, at least for half of the country. But they have been waiting for this quite a long time. So it will be such a relief. We have an expression in Turkish, as if the ox that's sitting on my chest has just got up. I think the feeling will be like that. Finally we're going to breathe. In terms of real politics, I think what a Brazilian social media user said when Bolsonaro lost goes for Turkey as well. We know that it's not going to be heaven, but at least we will know that the doors of the hell will be closed. And that's such a relief. That will be such a relief, hopefully.